Assalamu alaikum everyone. I hope all of you are doing well. So in this video, I am going to talk about reader response theorist. So let's start. The first theorist is Louise Michelle Rosenblatt. Her two influential texts include Literature as Exploration, which was written in 1938, was originally completed for the Commission on Human Relations and was a publication of the Progressive Education Association. It subsequently went through 5 editions. The second text is The Reader, the Text, the Poem, the Transactional Theory of the Literary Work, which was written in 1978, in which she argues that the act of reading literature involves a transaction between the reader and the text. She argued that the meaning of any text lay not in the work itself, but in the reader's transaction with it, whether it was a play of Shakespeare or a novel by Toni Morrison. Her work made her a well-known reader response theorist. In her view, each transaction is a unique experience in which the reader and the text continuously act and are acted upon by each other. A written work, often referred to as a poem in her writing, does not have the same meaning for everyone, as each readers bring individual background, knowledge, belief, and context into a reading act. She said that a reader's tendency towards identification with the character or events will certainly be guided by our preoccupation at the time we read. Our problems and needs may lead us to focus on those characters and situations through which we may achieve satisfaction. A woman reader who feels chained by her role in a conservative society is more likely to identify with the character who is oppressed. So the second theorist is Wolfgang Iser. In his approach, the reader response theory, Iser described the process of first reading, the subsequent development of the text into a whole, and how the dialogue between the reader and the text take place. Meaning is not an object to be found within a text, but it is an event of construction that occurs somewhere between the text and the reader. Specifically, a reader comes to the text, which is fixed word, but meaning is realized through the act of reading and how a reader connects the structure of the text to their own experience. To illustrate this, Iser uses the example of constellation. The impressions that arises as a result of this process will vary from individual to individual, but only within the limit imposed by the written as opposed to the unwritten text. In the same way, two people gazing at the night sky may both be looking at the same collection of stars, but one will see the image of a plow and the other will make out a dipper. The stars in a literary text are fixed. The lines that join them are variables. A literary work which for Iser is created when a reader and the text converge consists of two poles. The first one is artistic. That is basically the object, the text created by the author. The second one is the aesthetic. It is basically the realization accomplished by the reader. Both of these poles contribute to the two central points of Iser's theory, the concept of implied reader and the narrative gap. When an author is composing a text, they have a particular reader in mind, which is in part represented in the text. This reader is not identical to a real flesh and blood reader, but it is a textual structure anticipating the presence of recipient without necessarily defining them. The concept of the implied reader designate a network of response inviting structure which impels the reader to grasp the text. So these are the viewpoint of Wolfgang Iser. The third one is Stanley Fish. Fish is best known for his analysis of interpretive community. His work in this field examines how the interpretation of a text is dependent upon each reader's own subjective experience in one or more communities, each of which is defined as a community by a distinct epistemology. For Fish, a large part of what renders a reader's subjective experience valuable, that is why it may be considered constrained as opposed to an uncontrolled and idiosyncratic assertion of the self, comes from a concept native to the field of linguistics called linguistic competence. In Fish's source, the term is explained as the idea that it is possible to characterize a linguistic system that every speaker shares. In the context of literary criticism, he uses this concept to argue that a reader's approach to a text is not completely subjective and that an internalized understanding of a language shared by a native speakers of that given language make possible the creation of normative boundaries for one's experience with language. Fish theory states that a text does not have meaning outside of a text of cultural assumption regarding both what the character mean and how they should be interpreted. This cultural context often includes authorial intent though it is not limited to it. Fish claims that we are individual interpret text because each of us is part of an interpretive community that gives us particular way of reading a text. Furthermore, he claims we cannot know whether someone is a part of our interpretive community or not, because any act of communication that we could engage in to tell whether we are a part of the same interpretive community would have to be interpreted. That is because we cannot escape our interpretive community, we can never really know its limits. Fish views have been both influential in reader response theory as well as controversial. They have been interpreted as relativistic standpoint that words have no meaning. But Fish actually wanted to point out that reading of a text are actually structured. So that's all from my side. Please like, subscribe and share my channel. Thank you for watching.